Well, good morning. I know we might have some other people joining us this morning, but I wanted to get moving and be able to talk about some very exciting things that are happening at Think Good. And I want to start by sharing my screen with you. So let me do that. Okie dokie. Can you see this? The old systems, and they'll be sustainable, which I'm super excited about. So, Chelsea, you and I have already talked a little bit about, starting 2026. So I'm going to move past that one. And when other people come onto the call, we might go back there. But I really want to move ahead. So let's see. Oh, I did this one. Okay. So as I've been sharpening my own branding and language around this system, I realized that nobody really needs more information. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they were actually telling me that they had no idea in their organization whether there was a document retention policy. When I asked that person about donors, they said that they can see donors from at least 10 years ago, even if they've been lapsed. And so we have this information. And we do things like we do surveys. We survey our board. We survey our clients. We talk to different people to get information. So we have the information, but what nonprofits really need are decision tools to help them make things easier for themselves. And so that's what we're going to talk about. So I love this. Nonprofits are carrying years of insight that no longer comes together. So we have all this disjointed information and we don't know how to pull it all together. So let's go to the next one. First of all, I'm curious, Chelsea, do you have any questions at this point?
No, I don't have any questions at this point. Thanks for asking.
Okay, sure. So I'm drum roll, please. Drum roll, please. I'm excited to announce the Nonprofit Clarity System, which is a decision supported framework that updates how nonprofits think, decide, and communicate without starting over. Okay, because you have all this information, but what do you do with all of it? How can you uh, use that information to relieve the decision fatigue? So what happens is you're going to go from accumulated insight, right? Years of knowledge about your organization or somebody else's years of knowledge about your organization into a place where you can make clearer next decisions. So I want you, I'm going to make a little pivot here. I want to talk a little bit about AI. So, does anybody have any thoughts about their current relationship with AI? Chelsea, can I pick on you again?
Sure. So, we're in the process of redoing our employee manual where we need to have an AI policy. So that is an issue we're dealing with. Um, and my take on it is that the AI train has left the station and there's no fighting it. It is our job now to define boundaries on what and how it can be used, and then learn how to do it and use it so that we can make it work for us. That's my goal as the
I'm cur-
executive director.
I'm curious if you've heard any buzz within either your board or staff about AI.
So, I use, as someone who writes grants, I use AI and and for public, even writing, checking letters, I run it forwards and backwards through the machine. I start with something and then I'll put it through and then I'll adapt it and then it's a great way to edit, obviously. And I think I might be using it the most. So,
Okay.
I think
Okay.
that that's my thought. I think that our marketing person put together an e-blast or a social media post that was remarkably well composed, and I did wonder if it was AI because it was either it was taken from something she saw, which is fine also. You don't have to create everything from zero. Or she used AI because it was very different than her usual writing. So I was
Oh,
happy about that.
that's so interesting. So the question is,
Hmm.
wouldn't it be cool if you had an AI system that was designed specifically for nonprofits?
Well, I guess that's the question. I think in some ways we're no longer in early days of AI, but we're in early days of the different types of AI. There's a lot of jokes about Gemini. One is a little more businessy, one is a little more cheeky. You can get Chat GBT. I think it's Chat GBT that you can say to Chat GBT, I don't like the tone that you're answering me in. And ChatGPT says, well, what do you mean? And then you could say, well, I like emojis and I like, little ways of making it feel like we're friends. And ChatGPT will remember all that. I like that ChatGPT saves everything. So you can go back and you have a record of it. As a nonprofit, you have that ability. It's not the same as a regular, user. So,
Yeah, I love everything that you said. It's so interesting because I use obviously ChatGPT. I
uh-huh.
rarely anymore use the standard ChatGPT, and I'm not saying that I use the premium one. I actually have been very proactive in finding the things that work specifically for me as an entrepreneur,
Good.
and that have some emotional intelligence to them. And this system actually has some of that
Mm.
which I love because it really gets to learn your voice. But the way that well, I'll hold off on it for a second to talk about the way that we created it. Um, but I think your insight is really important. And I would say, in your role as a CEO, um, it's important that if people are using AI, that they're using the same tools or that there's a standardization of where you get to. So if you have somebody who's using Perplexity, which Perplexity is a great tool for things like actually grants, you could use Perplexity for to learn about a company that you might be writing for. Or if somebody else is using, what are the other ones? Claude is another one. I think Claude is really great it can be great for writing. And I wouldn't use Claude and Perplexity for the same things. And some people are just using, Copilot or the Google product or the Microsoft products. However, again, what makes this opportunity so different is that it is designed the way we designed this. I designed this was knowing what I know about nonprofits, knowing what the outputs would be or would be wanted by nonprofits, and creating these three pieces in the framework to align with that. So it's to me, it's really quite exciting. And I've actually test driven it on a real life client in real time. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So thank you for your brilliant insight. So, Chelsea, you and I have already talked a little bit about, starting 2026. So I'm going to move past that one. And when other people come onto the call, we might go back there. But I really want to move ahead. So let's see. Oh, I did this one. Okay. So as I've been sharpening my own branding and language around this system, I realized that like nobody really needs more information. I was talking to somebody yesterday and they were actually telling me that they had no idea in their organization whether there was a document retention policy. When I asked that person about donors, they said that they can see donors from at least 10 years ago, even if they've been lapsed. And so we have this information. Uh, and we do things like we do surveys. We survey our board. We survey our clients. We talk to different people to get information. But so we have the information, but what nonprofits really need are decision tools to help them make things easier for themselves. And so that's what we're going to talk about. So I love this. Nonprofits are carrying years of insight that no longer comes together. So we have all this disjointed information and we don't know how to pull it all together. So let's go to the next one. Okay. So here's the deal. The current reality is that your organization, whoever is listening to this, your organization isn't confused. It's overloaded. It's overloaded. And there's a big difference between being confused and being overloaded. So here we have all this information that's out there, and we have smaller teams than ever. And we're like, we can't move anywhere. So we sort of, I love this image of a maze where we get sort of stuck in this maze and we're not really sure where to get out of this maze. And so this set of tools, which form the Nonprofit Clarity Framework, will clearly impact some of these situations. So if we have plans, strategic plans written before 2025, this is going to be a super helpful tool to use. If we have surveys that surfaced real concerns, but were never integrated, this will be a way to get that information and start thinking about it as a decision-making tool. This is one that I see often, which is messaging shifts depending on who's writing. Okay. And so one of the observations that I have about what's going on in nonprofits these days is that there is, okay, I'm going to go ahead and say it because my whole new philosophy for this year is to say things and be unfiltered, is that we have the weakest link. And the weakest link oftentimes is the person that's managing our messaging, and the person who's doing our social media, the person who's doing some of our correspondence. And I think there's a reason for this, which is that people think that they can come into an organization and lead a function, lead a resource development function, lead a messaging function, a marketing function. But they are not clear about the nonprofit world. And they are not, even if they buy into your mission, again, they're overloaded with all this information and they don't know where to start and create consistency in the messaging as it relates to the mission. And if you know me at all, and if you work with me at all, you know that for me, that's really critical, right? Everything is tied to the mission. So this system really helps to address that, where you might even be able to reallocate people's time. It also is very helpful when the board is on your tail asking you about what you want to focus on. And as a former CEO, I know that that is a big question, especially, everyone's raring to go. It's a new year. And everybody's like, well, what are our priorities? What are our priorities? And again, we might have been operating a certain way up until about a year ago. And now, with a lot of the changes in our funding issues, we've had to pivot and think differently about what it is we want to focus on. And I see focus and clarity being so connected and being so incredibly integrated. And I know that with organizations I work with, there's this whole notion of shiny bright object syndrome, right? And I'm seeing more and more organizations crossing lanes, trying things, really trying to, throw a dartboard and hit it in the middle when it's not even on the dartboard at all. So this is another reason why we're feeling overloaded and, you know, um, unclear about things. And I think the other piece is that this system help staff bridge the gap in real time of, you know, understanding where it is that we're going, how their role impacts that, and how collectively we're on the same page with who we are and what we're focused on. So without all of this, it's my observation. Again, everything that I do at Think Good is based on observations. It's based on observations of coaching nonprofit leaders for the last 7 years. It's based on my being a CEO of a large nonprofit for 7 years. And so what I see a lot of is decision fatigue. Decision fatigue. Like there's so many options, everything looks good, but we just don't know where to go. So again, one of the benefits of this system is that it will help you work through decision fatigue in a different way. Let me go to the next slide. So, the other part of that is decision fatigue is really expensive. If members of your team are unclear of where you're going, and a lot of this relates to strategy and direction. It's expensive because they're literally sitting at their desks saying, like, what do I do next? And I know that sounds very odd, but I do believe that to be true. And it's expensive because inconsistent fundraising language, whether it's between grants and social, there needs to be a bridge. There needs to be a bridge. And when we don't do that, we're paying staff to build a bridge that hasn't been connected yet. And so we want to address that. We can also have misalignment across staff and board because we're not clear on our messaging, we're not clear on our branding, and we're not clear on our goals. We also might have issues where our strategy lives in documents, not actions. And that's one of the things, you know, I talk a lot about with nonprofit leaders. And my own experience was, you know, I walked into a job that had a strategic plan that was put in a drawer that was 35 pages long. And the first thing I saw was this incredibly ridiculous notion of how many more houses we might build. And I mean, it scared me, first of all. And second of all, I knew it wasn't possible. So this system helps us really look at how we take strategic plans and put them into actions in a different way. And then finally, we're seeing a lot of churn and burn in the sector. You know, people basically getting exhausted, partly because of these clarity issues, and leaving. And what we know is it takes 18 to 24 months for anybody to really get a new job, right? To be both in a leadership role and some of these functional roles as well. You know, it takes people some time. And so we're losing, we keep going backwards instead of being able to take some steps forward. So, so let's talk a little bit about what this framework is and what it's not. So what this nonprofit clarity system is it's designed to help us make better decisions, to get us focused and insight driven. This one, I can't state enough, built for today's reality. So Chelsea, your thinking is very forward thinking about the way that you're using it. But my experience is that nonprofits often are the last people to come to the party. And so like they know it's out there. They know AI is out there. And again, people are doing it like in private, like someone's secretly doing it. And you can start to tell. I think that was a great story. You can start to tell like, where did this newsletter come from? Great job, right? And what I would like to do is for there to be more consistency in messaging. I think that's extremely helpful that we're all talking from the same script. And if everybody's got something different to say, if our grant writer has something to do differently than the person who's writing that newsletter, well, we're confusing our messaging. And what distinguishes a good nonprofit from a great nonprofit is the way that they can communicate that kind of alignment. It also really helps to create a shared map for the next 24 months. So this is not something that you will outgrow. Actually, you can use it for 24 months and then you can reprogram it into things that you're learning. You can actually reprogram it at any time, which is really cool. One of the coolest things about AI is that as long as you know what information you're starting with, your output is definitely going to reflect that. And so if you get more information, you're going to know which of these three tools you need to put that data into. So what this isn't is it's not traditional strategic planning, which is one of the components of the system. It is not a multi-month abstract exercise. And by what I mean by that is oftentimes people in communications are like, let's do, 30 days of our social media calendar planning. That's not what this is. You'll be able to get that, but the idea is that, again, it is a shared message, and it's not just driven by like what our next event is. And that's really important, right? So many people who are writing things like newsletters or social are like, oh, yes, we have our big event coming up, and everything just focuses on that. This is going to give you really powerful messages about your brand, who you serve, what you do, and where you're going. And you don't need to start from scratch. And I get involved in the system early on to help us make sure that we're pulling the right information from the correct places. And it certainly is not another binder on a shelf, because I hate binders and I hate them sitting on shelves. So this is so much more of a dynamic system. So who is this for? It is for people who've outgrown traditional planning, but still need structure. Okay. And again, when we talk about planning, we're talking specifically about leadership at the executive level, at the board level, and in the resource development area. Okay. Those three areas are very much impacted. If you know me well, you will know that I'm not the person who could create a chat bot for finances or for, let's see what else. Well, that's a big one for me. Or sort of operations, pieces of operations. That's not necessarily my jam. But the best fit signal. So, like, what of these bullet points are important to you, right? Are you working from a plan created before 2025? I forget if you are or you're not.
No, we are a strategic plan. No.
So it's you wrote it in 2025.
Well, actually, I think it was adopted in October of 2024. So it's our 24-25 fiscal year. So it's still part of that year.
Okay, and so yes, but that first 6 months of that fiscal year was not what we
Mhm.
expected to happen. Okay, so that's a piece of it. Best fit is also for strategy, fundraising, and well, if your strategy, fundraising, and messaging don't connect. So you're seeing those little pieces of the puzzle, but there's no big picture. We have multiple versions of priorities in mission language. So maybe the board is saying one thing and executive leadership is saying another thing. The resource development department is saying another thing. Volunteers are saying something different. So that's a big, like, yes, blinking light. This would work for you. Here's something that I think is really important. If you're struggling with limited capacity for long planning cycles, this is a system that will really, really work for you. And that capacity is the reality of the HR capacity for long planning cycles and the movement in and out of people. I certainly am seeing a lot of people afraid to lose people on their teams, which I get. But what I don't get is why we continue, even though we are completely empathetic as a sector, why are we dragging around staff that are not up to the job, that are not going to help us get to where we need to go to? Why are we doing that? And this tool can really help leaders feel more like, oh, yeah, well, that person, I can gently release that person back into the universe. And I might be able to use these tools within the system to have somebody else or myself start to think about the way that we can use all these pieces in a coordinated way. And finally, right, if you're ready for clarity and cohesion and momentum, the system is going to make sense for you. And, I think that comes with any organization, but it's very helpful when you're changing leadership from at the top, at the senior level, where that messaging looked and felt a certain way. And there's a new sheriff in town. And so that messaging might look a little bit differently than it did. And you're trying to get your staff on board with the new messaging, the new style, and to help get them feel excited about what they're doing. So, again, any questions, Chelsea? Okay.
Sounded good.
We're going well. Okay. So, let's get to the chase here. So, what do organizations walk away with? So, the first thing they get is a usable 24-month strategic framework. I'm going to talk about each of these three pieces in a second, but you will get a usable framework that you can use for 24 months. And I would feel comfortable saying that that would be true for your branding and your messaging as well. You will get a clear understanding of shared priorities that speed decisions, unified language for staff, board, and funders. Okay. We have board members out there, they're going out there and they're telling an old story. They're telling a story that might have been true 5 years ago, but it's not true now. Or they think we do something that we no longer do. Or they don't understand the big picture because they're in love with one specific priority and they really have lost total their total ability to look at the big picture and to really understand where we are, who we are as an organization. And certainly, I think, and I'm excited to talk about this with our funders, we're using, and I did this because my background is I'll say it, I'm going to own it. I'm a really good fundraiser. And in the years that I was a fundraiser, I had here are some templates that we used, right? And we took the templates and you can tweak them a little bit. And that's what we think will be helpful. But what if you could completely customize those grants for specific funders that connect with what they're all about? Not just what I'm all about, but speak to what they're interested in supporting differently. And I love that for this. I know for myself, the chats that I use are I'm constantly uploading them with new information about me so that they can help me, guide me as I'm selecting my strategy. Again, messaging that's consistent. And I think something you talked about earlier, emotionally resonant, right? What we know is you can kind of tell when somebody's just using a free version of GPT chat. You can, okay? Because it's so programmed to give some standard answers. Oh, here's Robin. That it becomes, it looks like everybody else's, right? So what's interesting is not just that you're looking at your stuff against your stuff, but you really need to think about your stuff against everybody else's stuff. And if it's all looking the same and feeling the same, that's probably not going to distinguish you from the crowd. Welcome, Robin. We're just talking about some things that are important to you, including this concept of unified language for staff, board, and funders, and messaging that's consistent and emotionally resonant. And by doing all of this, and again, my own personal experience using this system that I created and using it with a client that I work with, is like all of a sudden that organization feels like they're on fire with the messaging, what they're trying to share, and how they're communicating. So let me move on to the next slide and then we'll go backwards. So um, here are the three components that I'm very excited to share with you. The first one is Brand Voice Clarity Guide. Okay. And what that particular framework is around one voice across staff, contractors, and every platform that you have. Okay. So, for example, for myself, one of the things that I've been working on with my brand is that for years, I'm going to say that I've been much more squishy in what I do and how I do it. Like, okay, Deb, what does transformation really mean? What does leadership really mean? What do some of those things mean? And so I started thinking about like, what is it that I do that's really different for people? And what I do is I bring years of experience plus the ability to be forward facing, right? So I'm not afraid to share. I'm 63. Most people who've been consulting as long as I am and who are doing this work are not creating AI framework systems. I'm just going to say that. I'm pretty confident about that. So what I started to get when I started to really, like I kept working on this brand voice is this concept of think good unfiltered. Yeah, you want to know you're great and you're doing a good job, but I also want to call you out when you're not. I also want to be more vocal about that with people because, yes, I can support you, but I also can help you get the clarity that you need, the wisdom that you need, and the messaging in a totally different light. So I love that one. The stakeholder clarity snapshot. It's human insight and patterns you can use everywhere. So, Robin, we'll go backwards and, at the end, we'll talk more specifically about people's roles. But Chelsea, just so you know, Robin she has a great new title and she's doing research and grant writing for a large organization. So the stakeholder clarity snapshot, this is what it looks like. Again, built specifically for nonprofits. What I do, a stakeholder can be any kind of human in your database. Okay. So it could be a new donor. It could be a lapsed donor. It could be a major donor. It could be an event donor. It could be a funder, any kind of funder for grant writing. And what you do with this stakeholder clarity snapshot is you identify each of those stakeholders within your organization. And I work with you to do that. And then what you are able to do is generate custom content for those people. So, for example, one of the clients, I have one client that I've been working specifically with this on, and that client was using pretty much standard language in their annual appeal, right? Here's our annual appeal. What I was able to do with speed and accuracy was to create different stakeholder letters. So a grandparent might have been reading it and saying, wow, they like really understand like why I've been invested in the zoo. Or somebody who might be a member would get a different letter. Certainly, we did a lot of mailing to Libunts and Sybunts, right? So we created different content based on the fact that they may not have been to the zoo recently. They may not know what's happening at this organization. And so we created these differently and we ran the database and people got these letters. And this client can't believe like they have not been doing annual appeals and they got some really great results from it. And now we have that language that we can continue to tweak as we move forward and use it for capital campaign materials, et cetera. We know who those stakeholders are. If you're writing a grant, what you can do is when you'll be asked because there's a playbook. It's a messaging playbook that you get. And so with each stakeholder, you'll be asked a series of questions. Again, this is something I can work with you on. But the one question we're going to also ask is, what do I know about the stakeholder? Okay. And what do we know about their interest in the kinds of programs and our mission, more specifically? And how might we look at really focusing on what excites them versus what excites us? Like, I think that there's this interesting thing that we are excited to tell our story. Makes a ton of sense. We need to tell our story. And what if you could get more specifically messaging around how your story impacts that funder's story, right? So, for example, if that funder is interested in sustainability, you're not going to write a grant that looks the same for that for that profit organization that talks about sustainability if what they're really interested is early education, right? You've got to be able to be much more fluid. And I think that's going to open up so many more possibilities for people because your grant proposal is going to stand out. It's going to look so different than anybody else's. And then the final piece of the puzzle is this strategic clarity framework, which literally takes your current strategic plan, runs it through a framework that I've created, and it filters that plan for changes in environment. And I mean political environment, funding environment, competing agency information. And it is going to give you a strategic plan focused on, at the most, 3 to 5 things with minimum 3 to 5 action items. Now, the other thing that you get when you do this strategic clarity framework is you get access to a tool that I use called the ICAT, which is an internal capacity assessment tool. That information that comes up in the ICAT, again, which is part of the info we're gathering to create your very customized programming, is really going to help us see where we need to be headed based on what we know about what we're doing well and where our opportunities are, what our current strategic priorities are, and how we can really make sure we're aligned, and also how we factor in all the noise that's happening for us as we are trying to move forward. So again, this strategic clarity framework is incredibly powerful for decision making, for getting rid of the exhaustion of, well, I'd like to do that, but we can't do that now. Or when board members come to you and say, can we add this? I'd like us to spend more money on it, right? we might be able to say, put it in this framework and say, like, how does that align with where we're going? And give us some really good content around that as well. So, any questions about any of these three components right now? How is it landing with you? Robin, are you there?
I'm
I'm
trying.
here.
Go ahead, Robin.
What are your thoughts, Robin?
Yes, I mean, I think it's important because it's extremely cohesive. It kind of gives you a one voice, so to speak, that you can use across a variety of areas.
Yep,
Um,
exactly.
and I think that's probably important because you have a lot of different people that are working together in different areas, and not everybody, you have the mission, right? I'll just use that as an example. You have the mission statement. Everybody interprets things in a different way. Everybody writes things in a different way. So having something that is the same across, even if you switch employees or other people come in, or
Yes.
so that's a positive part of this as well, that the work is going to be done there. And I do like your example with regards to like the board, having something to without spending hours and hours and days and months trying to figure out capacity and meeting with internal staff, looking at what you're already doing, who's doing it, for it to be able to give you that information a lot quicker than doing all of those other things. So that's my take
Yeah.
so far.
Well, and I really appreciate that. Ultimately, what this also does is it really gives us the ability to work smarter, not harder. Like, the constant complaint in nonprofits is we're overworked. We don't have time to get things done. This is a no excuse. This really helps you free up time to focus on new opportunities, right?
Right. And it's continuity across what you do. It's marketing, it's your donor stuff, it's a higher level piece of it as well. It's a way to engage with your board. So it kind of touches bases all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. Chelsea, what's coming up for you?
I always have I think, about the logistics of it. So my interest is piqued, I will just say, because I'm trying to imagine it,
Mhm.
and yes, I can imagine in our donor database CRM that we have the different letters, we've tagged the different people in that way. So I'm interested. I do like Robin said, where you have the history and of the voice. And I think that that is a struggle across the board in any organization because you are producing marketing materials, publicity materials, even just flyers.
Right.
We struggle with just producing a single flyer.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Carlos, I have no idea if you're here or not, but you will be getting this recording. Carlos, are you here? Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about how I deliver it, the logistics, Chelsea. Um, it's delivered in a 6 to 8 week human led by me, AI supported synthesis. After that engagement, it's the system is yours forever. You don't have to renew the system. You don't have to pay a subscription fee. In the future, that could change. But right now, if you're an early adopter, you get this for life. Okay. My job in those 6 to 8 weeks is to make sure that we have gathered all the information that we could possibly use and need and feed it into the right framework, right? So we have three different frameworks. Some of them are going to have some similar information, some of them are not. So what I do is I create a checklist of items that I need to get from you. I put them in the right places, and we work together on this playbook, the Nonprofit Clarity System playbook, and we fill that in. We fill in that information so other people can look at it. And then we start to run things. And also in that 6 to 8 weeks, I help you think about the best ways to share what we're doing with our staff and also with our board. So if you're using, you know, Google to share your board information, um, I use Google for, as I do this and I keep updating it, I'll create it in the AI framework, and then I'll copy it right out of there and create a document. And then I put it in the appropriate folder that I need so I can find it, right? So I know exactly what. So if I'm talking about the nonprofit clarity system, I have anything that I generated for that in one place. If I'm doing something around the Rainmaker Circle and I'm working on my branding, all of that goes in one place. So it's really a file management program, but I feel that it's very important for me to be supportive as you are getting up and going with this. Um, and so, again, what I'm not doing is just throwing something at you, saying use it, and not listening to specifically how you want to get this customized for your organization. So again, this becomes an ongoing organizational asset, not a one-off deliverable.
So I
Okay.
have a couple questions for you, Deb. I'll
Bring it
just
on, Robin.
throw them out there. So I know you said at the end of it, you keep whatever this is, right? Um, so if there are things that you do through, just through your using and marketing it and some of your customer feedback and you decide that there's tweaks or other things, how does that work for the person who's purchased this? Do you, is there a fee for those updates? How do we know about those updates?
No,
Or, okay.
there's no fee for the update. So what happens is once we're past that 6 to 8 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
I basically turn the system over to you. Okay.
Gotcha.
And what happens then is as you get new information, let's just say that your organization gets this surprise $50,000 worth of funding for something very specific.
Mm-hmm.
And it means that you're going to be able to expand a program.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to be able to communicate about that. You'll know which of these three tools to use, and you add that. It's new insight. So basically, what you're doing is building a library. The way to
So it's
look is
learning. It's basically growing and learning.
it's learning specifically. Like we'll take the grants that you've written. We'll take any internal messaging that you have. We'll take all your stuff and put it in these systems. And then after that 6 to 8 week engagement, you're just going to keep filling your library.
Right.
Does that make
So
sense?
I'm sure that, yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I'm sure that, there may be some other people on the call that have a question as well. So obviously we're going through this with you. Um, in some organizations, the person who's on the call or on the thing is not the person who is the person necessarily always making the decisions. There has to be buy-in, right?
Right.
So is
100%.
there an opportunity somewhere before, somebody just says yes, or they might not be able to just say yes, to have some sort of a sample walkthrough of the system where you can invite
Sure.
other stakeholders?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Gotcha.
I would say that what that would look like is more seeing what's in the messaging playbook, the
Okay.
information that's requested. And I can
Hmm.
certainly share some output
Okay.
in that. So there is an opportunity as a next step to book a discovery call with people that you think would be important to have in the room. That
Hmm.
could be staff. And it could be a board member. I'm not, I don't think you need 25 people in the room. I think you
Right.
need key users. Like in your organization, Robin, you
Hmm.
definitely need Tim at the table to
Of course.
understand this. And you
Right.
also need Maria. It would be great to have her.
What about
Um,
our IT people? Anybody like that?
no, because
Have
it's not an IT
nothing. They're
thing.
good. It's web-based, right?
It's
I'm
web
assuming.
based. It's
Okay.
all web based, and so it doesn't have anything to do with your worrying
Gotcha.
about
Okay.
that messaging.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think it's important to know what people to, if you're going to do that, is what people to have at the table so
A
that
a
that
hundred
decision can
percent.
be made. Yeah. Yep.
100%. And they'll also understand why you're spending some time
Hmm.
building the system out. Okay. Um, Robin, did you have any other questions?
No.
Okay. Chelsea, what about you? Any other questions?
Not right now.
Okay. So let me just go to the last slide, which everybody, of course, wants to um, know what an investment like this looks like. All right, I'm going forward. Oop. Okay. So these engagements begin at $3,500. Okay. If you do not have a strategic plan, or if you have a very outdated strategic plan, let's say that that strategic plan was written in 2020, 21, 22, or 23, um, it will be more work for me to do that ICAT and to present it to different stakeholders to see what your organizational capacity looks like. So that would be at the higher end. The basic 3,500 is basically for the engagement that I just talked about. The 6 to 8 week delivery of those three components, working together, with me working together with you. Any questions? And I'm gonna be straight up about this again because I'm unfiltered. $3,500 in the life of an organization. I know money's tight, but I want you to think how much time this could save you. I actually, for example, I just saw something today that an organization posted that they were looking for a development communications person. And I just reached out to her and I said, I'd love to talk to you because that person in a small agency might not need to do that initially. She's new in her role. She might be able to get started with this and really like save lots of money before hiring somebody who's going to start like with sunglasses on. No idea why my camera got foggy, but anyway. Um, so I'm not trying to justify it, but I do think that it's a human capital issue, um, and a moving with speed issue. Yeah, people think they can do this, but I'm going to hold you accountable to getting done. We pick the time frame that you want to do the work in. So, but I'm gonna start with this $3,500 price, and no doubt it will become more expensive. So I want to give it first to people that, I know, care about, and follow me, and then I'll be assessing how that goes. So yeah, if you're an early adapter, we will keep it at 3,500.
So the other question I have is how labor intensive are the deliverables that you need people to provide to you to get this off the ground?
Well, I would say that's a you issue to understand because you need to know where your stuff is,
Right. So I mean I mean
right? So if
you
you
know what I
know,
mean,
like,
because everybody's usually from a small shop, so it's a matter of putting the time aside. I mean, we should have our shit together, so to speak. I'm just saying,
I
but
appreciate that. Yes, you should have your shit together, so to
we should
speak.
have our shit together, but it's sometimes it's the time, right? It's a matter of okay, we're a new year, a lot like organizations like ours, we're putting together tax letters, we're applying for grant, there's a million things going on, and you need to set time aside to pull these things, even if you know where they are. It's still just time. So
Yeah.
just
Well, what
curious.
what I will do is set up a Trello board for everybody that uses this, and you'll just put your information on that Trello board. So you don't have to do it all at once, but we'll
Right.
we'll have a column for each um, piece of the system, and then
Mm-hmm.
I'll say this is what I need, and you'll fill in the blanks.
Okay. Our information, not that I mind sharing stuff, because as a nonprofits, we share a lot of things, but there's certain things that we don't share. So
Yeah. Well,
anything
that's
from my
something.
organization does not, unless I want to share it, does not get shared with anybody else, correct?
Of course. No. Oh
Okay.
no. No, no, no,
Okay.
no, no.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. I figured that, but I just wanted to just
Proprietary to
ask.
you. And that's what
Okay.
I love about it. It is designed for you and not shared with anybody else.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, I want to thank you for being here today. all the people that are interested in this will get a copy of this recording. And my suggestion is for the next step is to just set up time to chat about it. I know, Chelsea, you have some other needs. So, what I'd like to do is be able to talk about this in the context of those needs. And Rob and I will have that conversation with Tim as well
Hmm.
when I talk to him. So,
Sure.
um, of course, I'm big into the bundle. So if we can bundle things up together and make them more accessible, financially accessible for agencies, then I'm always happy to do that.
Got it. Awesome.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was great.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. And I look forward to the possibility of supporting you in your clarity.
Okay.
Thanks, Deb.
Care.
Have a great afternoon.
Have a great
Bye,
day.
Chelsea.
Bye,
Take care.
Robin. Bye,
Bye
Carla.
bye.